The Cowboys are more dangerous than what people want to admit. This is a playoff team. The Cowboys should win anywhere between 9 to 12 games at best this season if everything goes right. But they're being viewed down upon because of the hiring of Brian Schottenheimer. He may be a little bit in over his head. It's a Jerry Jones, yes man kind of decision. Understandable. But let's not talk about the Dallas Cowboys and sleep on this team like they still don't have one of the best rosters in the NFL. Yes, they do go budget hunting or great value hunting in free agency, and they don't really put their best foot forward, but they do an incredible job of crushing it every year in the draft. The Cowboys are one of the best drafting teams in the National Football League, and the majority of their best players are guys that they have drafted and developed. And when you look at this Dallas Cowboys roster, top to bottom, they don't really have too many weaknesses. When Dak Prescott is fully healthy, he's a top 12 or better quarterback. You got an elite offensive line. You got one of the best wide receiver duos with the addition of George Pickens pairing up with CeeDee Lamb. You're going to have a top 10 defense with Micah Parsons being one of the 5 best pass rushers in the league. It's insane to me the amount of hate that Micah Parsons receives when the guy has had double-digit sacks every year that he's been in the NFL. And if he would have played in every game this past season, he probably would have ended up leading the league in sacks. He's one of those guys that could break the NFL's all-time sack record when it comes to sacks in a single season. He's that kind of talent. The Cowboys need to stop playing around and pay that man his money. Not only do they got Michael Parsons, but they got Dante Fowler back, and they re-signed a really good interior defensive tackle, and their secondary is really good as well. Trayvon Diggs missed a lot of time for injuries last season. He's going to be back. Deron Bland didn't start the first part of the season fully healthy. You still got Malik Hooker, who is really good. The Dallas Cowboys have one of the best rosters in the NFL still, but that seems to always be glossed over. And Brian Schottenheimer, he's not going to suck as the Cowboys' new head coach. Is he going to be good enough to get this team to a Super Bowl? Probably not. But Jerry Jones is more so the reason for why the Cowboys can't win another Super Bowl than what Brian Schottenheimer is going to be. It's not as if Brian Schottenheimer doesn't have any experience being a quality coach in this league. When he was the offensive coordinator for the New York Jets, when they went to back-to-back AFC championships with Mark Sanchez, he had the NFL's best rushing attacks during those years. And the Dallas Cowboys' biggest weakness on offense, Brian Schottenheimer specializes in, which is the ground game, which the Cowboys were one of the worst rushing teams in the league last year. This season, the ground game should be a strength because that's what Brian Schottenheimer specializes in. And if Dak Prescott can get a reliable ground game and you take the ball out of his hands and you only ask him to throw the football when need be, and you get him throwing play action and he's throwing downfield bombs to George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb, maybe that could be what is the factor that helps the Cowboys have a little bit more postseason success. And Brian Schottenheimer also is the son of Marty Schottenheimer, who was a really good head coach. The thing with Marty is that he just wasn't able to be some of the greatest teams of that era during his peak as a coach, but he was still a good enough one where he could rebuild your team, make you a contender. He just couldn't beat the best of the best. And Brian Schottenheimer, being the son of Marty, I think that there's a lot of potential here. And it makes sense why Jerry Jones kind of went ahead and he made this risk and he called it, "This is the biggest gamble of my career." I understand why he says that, because if Brian Schottenheimer is anywhere as good as a coach as what his dad was, then the Dallas Cowboys are going to be a force to be reckoned with. And they're not too far away from a talent standpoint to where the Philadelphia Eagles are. The Cowboys have always had really good teams. It's just The quarterback play hasn't always been up to par as what it needs to be from a guy that's getting paid the money that Dak Prescott has received. And the coaching has let them down at times. But Brian Schottenheimer is a guy that he's willing to make changes. And the guys in the locker room seem to really like this guy more than what they did to Mike McCarthy. So I think that there's too much stock being put into how bad things went for the Dallas Cowboys. When you go through the amount of injuries that the Cowboys had to go through last year, anybody's season could go the way that it did. Nobody can win when you're down the majority of your best players and you got a bunch of second string guys in. That's just kind of a tough ask. Even if Andy Reid or prime Bill Belichick was in that situation, injuries would have gotten the best of them. Injuries can deplete a really good team. But what people do is they try to use the past to predict what the future is going to be. And football isn't predicated off what happens the previous season. What the Cowboys do this season is ultimately going to be what decides how far this team is going to go. And this should be a team that should be at least a playoff contender at worst. At their best, they're as good as anybody. They can compete for it all. You never know. But this is a team that is being incredibly slept on. You don't really hear that about the Cowboys a lot. Normally, they are incredibly overhyped by their fan base every offseason. But if there ever was a year to be high on the Dallas Cowboys, it definitely is this one with the low expectations that they seem to have entering this season.